Senate will come to order, March 2nd. Roll call, please.
Legislative Day number 13, Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. Roll call, Anderson. Here. Baldwin. Here. Beitman. Here. Boner. Bouchard. Here. Case. Present. Cooper. Here. Driscoll. Here. Ellis. French. Here. Murphy. Here. Guru. Hicks. Here. Hutchings. Here. James. Here. Kinski. Cole. Present. Cost. Here. Landon. Here. McEwen. Here. Nethercott. Pappas. Here. Perkins. Here. Rothfuss. Here. Salazar. Here. Schuler. Here. Scott. Here. Steinmetz. Here. Wasserberger. Here. Boner. Here. Guru. Here. Kinski. Here. President Dockstetter.
Here.
30 present.
Thank you. Prayer by Pastor Lebovich.
Good morning. Please join me in prayer. Triune God, Lord, we know that unity is never easy. To take several different parts and pieces and make something like a car or an airplane or even a computer seems frankly impossible. And yet by the knowledge and creative thought that you have given us as humanity, we have been able to create these things. Nonetheless, we all know that relational unity, civic unity, state and national unity seems so much harder because we are the pieces that have to fit together unified. Not a passive unity where we just give up ourselves, not a blind unity where we just follow the masses, but an active unity where we can agree to disagree and nonetheless love one another in you. Where we surrender ourselves to one another, submit to each other, but most importantly, where we submit to you, O God. It is impossible for us to build unity in and amongst ourselves, but you, O God alone, as the sovereign designer and maker, can build us as a unified whole. So, Lord, it is my humble plea that you bring unity in you alone to this legislature and to our state, our nation, and our world even today. As we wrestle with major and minor decisions, bring unity in you. As we share and listen and respond, bring unity in you. As we do our best to represent our people well, bring unity in you. And as we look to our nation and our world surrounding, we plead, bring unity in you. And as we look at our nation and all the things around us, make us one as you are one through the only way that you have made. And may you be glorified by our pursuit, our heart, and our desire for unity. We ask, Father, that you make a unified thing here where many would say it is impossible. For Lord, what is impossible for man is possible only for you. It is in your name that we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Senator Boner, would you lead us in the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nurse of the day, Jennifer James. Back there somewhere? No? Today in Wyoming history, in 1890, Fort Laramie's status as an active Army post ended. Quote of the day, Thomas Jefferson: I never considered a difference of opinion in politics, in religion, in philosophy, as cause for withdrawing from a friend. A reminder, Friday, all interim topics must be submitted via the online form to LSO by 4 p.m. Reading, correction, approval of journal. Reading clerk, please read in the journal of committee report.
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of March 1, 2022 has been read and recommends it be approved. Senator Kolb, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the report is adopted. Folks, under new business today, I have a proposal here that I'm going to read out coming from the Senate President's desk. Senators, it's come to my attention that video recording is occurring in the Senate committee meetings and on the floor of the Senate. This video recording is a distraction and it's potentially being used to intimidate our members. Therefore, based on my authority to preserve the order and decorum of this Senate and its committees provided in Senate Rule 2-2 and Wyoming Statute 28-3-101, I declare that this is out of order and a breach of decorum for anyone to video record with any device or in any form. This is from the floor of the Senate without prior approval of the President of the Senate or the Chairman of the Committee of the Whole when in Committee of the Whole. Also, in any room in which a committee of the Senate is meeting without the prior approval of the committee chairman. A senator who violates this policy shall be subject to the discipline of the Senate. A senator or a member of the public who violates this policy in a committee meeting shall be removed from the committee. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, March 1, 2022, message number 6. Mr. President, the House of Representatives has completed consideration of the budget bill, Senate File 1. In accordance with Joint Regulation 14-1G, the bill has been referred directly to a conference committee of 5 members to meet with a like committee from the Senate to report recommended amendments for final consideration by both houses with respect to both budget bills, House Bill 1 and Senate File 1, and the amendments thereto. Signed, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk. March 1, 2022, message number 166. Mr. President, the House appointed House conferees to meet with a like committee number 1 from the Senate on amendments to Senate File 1. House conferees are Representative Nicholas, Chairman, Representative Larson, Representative Schwartz, Representative Stiff, and Representative Walters. March 1, 2022, message number 170. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on 3rd readings. House Bill number 44, Mobile Home and Vehicle Titles and Transfers, ayes 59, excused 1. Message number 169, March 1, 2022. Mr. President, House Bill number 71, Driving While License Suspended Enhancement Amendment, ayes 54, noes 5, excused 1. House Bill number 92, message number 178. House Bill number 92, Abortion Prohibition, Supreme Court Decision, ayes 43, noes 16, excused 1. Message number 180, House Bill number 105, Severance Tax Reduction, Coal, ayes 40, noes 19, excused 1. Message number 182, House Bill number 136, Underground Water Contested Case Hearings, ayes 41, noes 16, excused 3. March 1, 2022, message number 168. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on 3rd reading in an amended form. House Bill number 64, Vehicle Service Contracts, ayes 54, noes 5, excused 1. Message number 172, House Bill number 27, Visitation Rights, ayes 39, noes 20, excused 1. Message number 173, House Bill number 56, Examination of Books of Certain Districts and Entities, ayes 56, noes 3, excused 1. Message number 174, House Bill number 72, Hunting License Application Funds, ayes 47, noes 12, excused 1. Message number 175, House Bill number 83, Protection of Parental Rights Applications, ayes 38, noes 21, excused 1. Message number 176, House Bill number 85, Child Endangering Controlled Substance Use While Pregnant, ayes 46, noes 13, excused 1. Message number 177, House Bill number 91, County Officers' Salaries, ayes 44, noes 15, excused 1. Message number 179, House Bill number 96, State Official Salaries, ayes 40, noes 19, excused 1. Message number 181, House Bill number 131, Nuclear Power Generation and Storage Amendments, ayes 45, noes 14, excused 1. Message number 183, House Bill number 137, State Land Exchanges Public Notice, ayes 45, noes 12, excused 3. Message number 184, House Bill number 146, ayes 46, excused 4. House Bill number 146, General Government Reports. Message number 185, House Bill number 147, Cash-Based Budget Development, ayes 35, noes 22, excused 3. Signed, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Bills on first reading. Senator Scott,
Privilege of the floor and to administrative matters.
please do.
Mr. President, first, just a personal request. Somebody here has borrowed my volume 2 of the statutes late last week and hasn't returned them, and I would appeal to whoever it was to remember that and return it.
Volume 2 needs to come home.
Well, it's got my name on it. Mr. President, second, I think there's a difficulty with meeting notices from the other house. We don't have I'm finding not a reliable source of finding them out. It took me 15 minutes this morning to even find out when a particular house meeting was scheduled that I was aware of. So, Mr. President, it used to be a reliable bulletin board on each end. That's not there. The meeting notice sheets from the other house contain that information, but they aren't passed out universally, can be hard to find. And Mr. President, they used to send notices to the sponsors and committee chairman involved, and that's not happening. We need to do something so there is a reliable source of those things, because I've had a problem, and from what I'm seeing in my committee, where House members are not showing up when I'd kind of expect them to, I think the problem is
Because they missed the
not
notice.
confined to the Senate.
Right.
So I would urge that
Let me take
something
that,
be done to get a more
yeah,
reliable
let me take that
source.
up with the leadership on the other side as well, and I respect that. I'm an old paper guy, and I like to see where I'm going on the piece of paper. Let's go to you, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor, please.
Please do.
I see a guest up here I'd like to introduce today. From Meeteetse, it's the Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Shane Ogden.
Okay, welcome to the Senate. I have a note here, follow-up. Co-sponsoring the Senate should get a meeting notice, House calendar across from Linda's office. So Senator Scott would check straight across from the Secretary's office there, and let's see if we can get that fixed for you all the way, okay? And if staff could maybe make sure Senator Scott has those notices, okay? Thank you. Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor, please.
Please do.
I'd like to introduce my beautiful wife and my better three quarters. She's also our doctor of the day.
She was,
Dr.
yeah.
Jennifer
And
James.
I apologize for missing her. I looked back and didn't see. Please step up to the edge and let us acknowledge you, okay? Thank you. Welcome to the Senate. Help us stay healthy today. Thanks, Senator James. Anything further? All right. Bills on first reading. House Bill 71, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 71, Driving While License Suspended Enhancement Amendment, sponsored by Representative Kriegel, an act relating to driver's licenses.
House Bill 71 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. House Bill 83, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 83 engrossed, Protection of Parental Rights Application, sponsored by Representative Stith, an act relating to parental rights, passed the House.
House Bill 83 assigned to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. House Bill 85, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 85 engrossed, Child Endangering Controlled Substance Use While Pregnant, sponsored by Representative Oakley, an act relating to crimes and offenses, passed the House, ayes 46, noes 13, excused 1.
Thank you. House Bill 91, House Bill 85 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. House Bill 91, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 91 engrossed, County Officers' Salaries, sponsored by Representative Greer, an act relating to counties, passed the House.
House Bill 91 referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. House Bill 96, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 96 engrossed, State Official Salaries, sponsored by Representative Nicholas, an act relating to state elected officials' salaries, passed the House, ayes 40, noes 19, excused 1.
House Bill 96 referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. House Bill 146, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 146 engrossed, General Government Reports, sponsored by the House Appropriations Committee, an act relating to the administration of government, passed the House, ayes 56, excused 4.
House Bill 146 assigned to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. House Bill 147, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 147 engrossed, Annual Cash-Based Budget Development, sponsored by Representative Barlow, an act relating to state budgeting, passed the House, ayes 35, noes 22, excused 3.
House Bill 147 referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. House Bill 136, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 136, Groundwater Contested Case Hearings, sponsored by Representative Eklund, an act relating to underground water, passed the House, ayes 41, noes 16, excused 3.
House Bill 136 assigned to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. House Bill 137, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 137 engrossed, State Land Exchanges Public Notice, sponsored by Representative Western, an act relating to state lands, passed the House, ayes 45, noes 12, excused 3.
House Bill 137 referred to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. House Bill 72, first reading in the House bill.
House Bill 72 engrossed, Hunting License Application Funds, sponsored by Representative Summers, an act relating to game and fish, passed the House, ayes 47, noes 12, excused 1.
House Bill 72 referred to Committee Number 6, Transportation. House Bill 56, first reading in the House bill.
House Bill 56 engrossed, Examination of Books of Certain Districts and Entities, sponsored by the Management Audit Committee, an act relating to the Department of Audit, examination of books of special districts and certain specified entities, passed the House, ayes 56, noes 3, excused 1.
House Bill 56 assigned to Committee Number 7, Corporations. House Bill 44, first reading in the House bill.
House Bill 44, Mobile Home and Vehicle Titles and Transfers, sponsored by Representative Newsom, an act relating to motor vehicles, passed the House, ayes 59, excused 1.
House Bill 44 assigned to Committee Number 8, Transportation. House Bill 64, first reading in the House bill.
House Bill 64 engrossed, Vehicle Service Contracts, sponsored by Representative Brown, an act relating to the insurance code, passed the House, ayes 54, noes 5, excused 1.
House Bill 64 assigned to referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. House Bill 105, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 105, Severance Tax Reduction COLE, sponsored by Representative Hallinan, an act relating to taxation and revenue, passed the House, ayes 40, noes 19, excused 1.
House Bill 105 referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. House Bill 131, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 131 engrossed, Nuclear Power Generation and Storage Amendments, sponsored by Representative Burkhart, an act relating to environmental quality, passed the House, ayes 45, noes 14, excused 1.
House Bill 131 referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. House Bill 27, first reading the House bill.
House Bill 27, engrossed visitation rights, sponsored by Representative Fortner. An act relating to public health and safety passed the House, ayes 39, noes 20, excused 1.
House Bill 27 referred to Committee Number 10, Labor Health. House Bill 92, first reading, the House bill.
House Bill 92, abortion prohibition, Supreme Court decision, sponsored by Representative Rodriguez-Williams. An act relating to abortion passed the House, ayes 43, noes 16, excused 1.
House Bill 92 referred to Committee Number 10, Labor and Health. Bills on second reading. Okay. Let's go back to standing committee reports at this point. Give a little time for seconds.
March 1, 2022. Mr. President, your Committee Number 5, Agricultural, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 4, engrossed. Water permits livestock on federal land. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Senator Boner, Chairman. March 1, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 3, engrossed, state land leases. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Senator Boner, Chairman. March 2, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 108, Funeral Service Practitioner Amendments. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, and McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. March 2, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 110, engrossed, Board of Psychology Behavior Analyst Regulation. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, and McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. March 2, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 117, engrossed, Occupational Therapy Licensure Compact. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, and McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. March 2, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 88, engrossed, Name Change, Notice of Publication of Minors Amendment. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. Senator Nethercott, Chairman. March 2, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 125, engrossed, Workplace Injury Assistance, Information, and Guidance. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Cooper, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. No, Senator French. Senator Nethercott, Chairman.
Now bills on second reading. Let's go back to, I don't have a microphone for you, so you got to borrow Senator Perkins there. Okay, go ahead, Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor. Good senators, we have with us visiting the Capitol today, former Representative Charles Pelkey, a member of the bar, here visiting the good Senate. Welcome, former Representative Charles Pelkey from Laramie, Albany County.
Welcome back to Capitol.
Former Representative Pelkey and I are law school classmates,
Very good.
right?
Just a brief word, Representative, while she has the microphone there for you. Welcome back to Capitol.
What am I?
Thank you. Can I use yours? Sure, absolutely. Well, I was in town. I was in jail for a little while, but they always let me out when I ask.
Glad you got a yard pass.
My client, however, is still there. Doing well. I was in town. I thought I'd stay high and applaud you for the work you're doing. I watch Congress and then I look at the Wyoming legislature, and I know there are broad disagreements, but you guys managed to work together. And aside from Baldwin, you're all civil.
We try to keep him in line.
Well, it's the ties, man. But yeah, everything's going well. I'm practicing law in Laramie. Senator Nethercott pointed out that we are 2009 classmates from the UW Law School, as is Representative Oakley. So we all three graduated at the same time. Everything's going well. My son is 28. He's working in blockchain, thanks to the Wyoming legislature. He's doing it in Portland, though. And my daughter's about to graduate from UW with a 3.94 average.
Congrats.
She's oh, damn right. And then, yeah, she majored in communication, got another degree in psychology, and and a minor in gender studies, but I won't bring that up. And then she has a $50,000 a year job waiting for her in May. So she's all set.
Wish all the best to you and your family, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you guys.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 5, Wild Horse and Burro Management, has an appropriation ask that be referred to number 2 appropriations at this time.
Repeat the number again, please.
House Bill 5, Wild Horse and Burro Management.
Oh, we have to read that in first.
Oh, yeah, you read it?
But I appreciate your
bills.
ambitious attitude and ready to get it moved over, but let's get it read in and then we'll send it over to the folks at Committee 2. Thank you. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I would just remark that Mr. Pelkey was a reporter for the Casper Star Tribune when I was down here in previous years.
Way back when. Okay, very good. Thank you, Senator Scott. Anything further? Okay, let's jump right into second readings. House Bill 9, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 9, Economic Development Programs, Tribal Inclusion, sponsored by the Select Tribal Committee.
Thank you. House Bill 9, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it's so ordered. House Bill 21, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 21, Repealing Exemption for One-Way Pagers.
House Bill 21, having been read 2 separate times, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 22, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 22, engrossed, Industrial Revenue Bonds Pilot Payments.
There is an amendment. Read in the amendment, please.
House Bill 22, second reading amendment number 1, to engrossed copy, page 2, line 3, after.
Mr. Vice President, your name is on this amendment. It's all yours. You have an amendment to move, sir. It's second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 22. Yeah, it's on a white copy. This is for House Bill 22, Industrial Revenue Bonds Pilot Payments.
Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 22. Would ask for your favorable consideration. After the debate yesterday, Mr. Chairman, I think I finally understand what we're doing here, but it provided me some level of concerns, particularly with the question of how long could these bonds be issued. My concern there is that you could actually issue bonds that have a very long life expectancy that exceed the term of the actual benefits of the project. And so this is just to try to put some sideboards on it that said that you could issue these bonds for 10 years, not to exceed that. That's a decade. And then, Mr. Chairman, the one provision in here that probably gives me the most pause is if we go into down on page 2, lines 6 and 7, is the 50%. And either I didn't understand the discussion yesterday, or what I understood give me a great deal of pause that you could have an entity, a governmental entity, go in and issue an industrial revenue bond. And under this scenario, they are negotiating away 50% of the ad valorem taxes for all of those other entities. So you may have a municipality go in there or let's say a county, for instance, that has numerous special districts and other cemetery districts, museum districts, All these districts rely on those ad valorem taxes to fund their general operation, and yet you could have a county negotiate away their revenue stream. And the way the bill reads right now, it's just gone. And so that gives me a great deal of concerns of the ramifications of these, that one entity can get rid of somebody else's funding stream. And so that's the reason for the amendment, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask for your favorable considerations and would stand for any questions.
Discussion on the amendment, discussion on the amendment. Ready for the question? Question being called. This is on, what did I miss? Oh, right in front of me.
Kind of
Senator.
hard. Thank you, Mr.
It's
Chairman.
all yours, Senator Hutchings.
On and for the amendment, and I'd like to ask a question, maybe the bringer can help me with this. I'm a little concerned about how this bill aligns up with our Wyoming Constitution, Article 15:12, when it talks about exemption from taxation. There's a sentence right in the middle where it says that the property of the United States, the state, counties, cities, towns, school districts, and municipal corporations, when used primarily for government purposes. Just wondering how this falls in line with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion before we go back to the sponsor? Any further questions? Let's go back to the sponsor. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't think my amendment speaks to that issue. That would be somebody that the sponsors of the bill, I think, would need to address that question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All right, we are on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 22. Question being called. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The amendment has passed. House Bill 22, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 30, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 30, School Finance, Increasing Cash Reserves.
House Bill 30, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 37, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 37, engrossed, Juvenile Justice Data Reporting.
House Bill 37, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 39, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 39, Pre-Application Determinations for Licensing.
House Bill 39, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 43, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 43, engrossed, Trophy Game, Big Game, and Wild Bison License Allocations.
House Bill 43, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 45, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 45, Mine Reclamation Bonding, Voluntary Assigned Trusts.
House Bill 45, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 46, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 46, Partnership Challenge Loan Program Amendments.
Having been read 2 separate times, House Bill 46, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 59, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 59, Workers' Compensation, COVID-19.
House Bill 59, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. House Bill 70, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 70, Digital Identity Protection.
House Bill 70, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. House Bill 86, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 86, Genetic Data Privacy Amendments.
House Bill 86, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. House Joint Resolution number 1. Read it in.
House Joint Resolution 1, Supreme Court Justices and District Judges Retirement.
House Joint Resolution number 1, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, So ordered. Bills on third reading and final passage. Senate File 51, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 51, Fairness in Women's Sports Act, sponsored by Senator Schuler, an act relating to school sports.
There are no amendments. Senate File 51, having been read three separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, Senate File 51. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks?
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis excused. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 51, 24 aye, 5 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 51, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 51 has passed the Senate. Senate File 70, for third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 70, Reviser's Bill, sponsored by the Management Council, an act relating to the revision of statutes and other legislative enactments.
There are no amendments. Ready for the question? Senate File 70, having been read three separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, Senate File 70. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstetter? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 70, 29 aye, 1 excused.
Senate File 70, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 70 has passed the Senate. Senate File 83, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 83, Prohibiting Chemical Abortions, sponsored by Senator Salazar, an act relating to abortions.
Senate File 83. Ready for the question? Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is a very significant bill that affects drugs that physicians prescribe to women, not just for what you're thinking of as an abortion. It's also used to prescribe to, in the case of miscarriages, some of these drugs are. They prevent an incomplete miscarriage. Miscarriages are very common, too common. And drugs protect women from sepsis, from incomplete abortion. And that's what a miscarriage is also called in medical, an abortion in the terminology. So it's confusing, and it's way, way overreaching, Mr. President. And I'm really concerned that we are injecting ourselves into the relationship between a physician and a woman who's had a miscarriage and needs a necessary treatment. I ask you to vote no on this bill.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. I appreciate the words of my good friend from Lander. Also appreciate my friend from Riverton who brought this bill, but just a couple of things. It's pretty easy if you take out the little directory that tells us all who we are, and you can look me up and you can tell even what denomination that I claim, as far as going to church. So all of that said, I have to represent my medical community today. And I do feel like it is important. A lot of our forefathers and all of those leaders who came after them have argued for the fact that we do have to have some separations. And for me, that separation point today comes in this bill. And it's a tough one. We've got some young people in our balcony. It's a tough issue to talk about, Mr. President. But I'll tell you, last year before we came down, this bill was on the docket, and I had a young couple come and visit me. They're almost like our kids. They grew up in my house having Kool-Aid with our kids. And this would have affected them badly. And they asked me not to support this legislation. It goes even further than that. They needed a procedure. That was between them and their doctor. This casts a net over the top of issues like that. It also does not reference things that happen to young women. It doesn't say anything about assault or rape or incest. It just throws the net over the whole thing. And I just cannot quite get there because of that, Mr. President. I agree with my friend from Lander. I think this bill is too far reaching, and I'll be a no vote today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to speak briefly on this, and not to address the ethical or my moral thoughts, but specifically the medical thoughts, and that the two previous speakers exactly identified that these drugs are used in other things besides just what we call abortions. They're used in spontaneous abortions, which is miscarriage commonly called. And I have a great fear that if we outlaw those drugs, or even if we don't outlaw those drugs, that it will become such a danger of using those drugs. Pharmacists, pharmaceuticals are going to become reluctant to put those drugs out, and that will be to the detriment of many of these women who need those drugs for specific medical diagnosis, not for an elective abortion, but for a medical diagnosis. And for that reason, although I voted no in committee, I will be a no here because I think it's important to make that distinction. And with that, I would urge a no vote.
Further discussion? This is on Senate File 83. Senate File 83. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against, and I want to stress once again an important concept, which is that we can disagree about issues, important issues of this type. We can have different beliefs, different things that we hold dear, different philosophies, different religions. And that was how this country was built and designed. That is how the United States Constitution is structured. to ensure that those differences are respected. This is a challenging issue, and Mr. President, I have no interest in changing anyone's mind on this topic or your beliefs on this topic. The only appeal I'll make is to recognize that there are reasonable differences and different beliefs, and that around half the country has one general set of beliefs, and around half the country has another general set of beliefs. And currently, all of those beliefs are respected. Legislation like this tries to restrict and pick a winner in that system. And I think we should fight that. If the winner were the side in some way that I believe, and somehow restrictions were attempted to be put on the proponents of this legislation, I would oppose that as well, because it is not this government or the federal government's role to restrict based on those beliefs. It's okay that we disagree. It's good that we disagree. We shouldn't all have uniform beliefs. We should respect each other's beliefs, though. And here we have a circumstance where government is trying to tell people what is and isn't right, trying to reach down and control further the rights of individuals, the rights of women, in a way that interferes on the current rights that they have. They're free to respect and believe everything that's in this legislation now, if that's what they choose to believe. They are free to. Let's not restrict them, Senate, if they believe otherwise. On and against, Mr. President. Thank you.
I have two people up. Let's save the sponsor for Chairman Perkins. Let's go to you and then go back to the sponsor. Let's do it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I too, I'm a no vote on this. In addition to the things that have been said, I consider myself a very pro-life individual in this, but as I read this bill and I've thought about this bill, it reaches back, and I think ultimately, I think it touches those things which are commonly called the morning after pill, and which is, just really an inch from just oral contraceptives. And when we start to reach in that far, Mr. President, that's just too much government for me. And I think the other issue that I have with this bill is the penalty phase is aimed at the healthcare provider. And so the father, the mother, or other individuals who are in, because this would now be a crime, or complicit in that crime, then apparently there is no consequence for them, but it's just simply something that's aimed at a healthcare provider. And for those reasons, I think it's just too much government for me, and I'm going to vote no on this, Mr. President.
Save the sponsor, and we're going to go with, I'm going to save you Senator Zoller's sponsor, Salazar. Let's go to Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just to clarify some things about what has been said, particularly in reference to miscarriages and things like that. If you go to 35-6102, no abortion after viability exception. An abortion shall not be performed after the embryo or fetus has reached viability except when necessary to preserve the woman from an imminent peril that substantially endangers her life or health according to appropriate medical judgment. So there is no interference there when the appropriate medical judgment is for her health, and we do not intrude between her and her doctor in those cases. So I just wanted to clear the record on that point, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments before we go back to the sponsor? Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was not going to say anything and just take the vote, but my conscience is not going to stand still. This is a national debate, and it's going to be before the Supreme Court. Our country is divided about this issue. But let me tell you why I am bringing this bill forward. and it's so simple. I believe that abortion is the taking of human life. I believe that there is life in that womb at the moment of conception. And how ironic that I stand here today, because when I was a young man, I could care less about this issue. I could care less about politics. But it was this issue that brought me involved in politics. I was a hockey player. This is the last place I would have seen myself when I was 20. And yet I stand here today as a pro-life legislator. To those legislators in this chamber today who have argued against this bill, I know you are honorable people. I know you. I respect your opinion. We have a disagreement, but I respect you, and I wouldn't say that if I didn't believe it. But for me, nothing is more important than protecting human life, the innocent life that cannot speak for themselves. And that is why I bring this bill forward. I make no judgments against anyone who votes no on this bill. But I can tell you, for me, I speak for me and no one else, I speak for me, I cannot be half pro-life. Either I believe it's a life or it's not a life. And once I answered that question for me, all other questions were answered. Again, I hold no judgment toward anyone who opposes this bill. All of you are honorable members, but we disagree. I ask for your vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ready for the question? Senator Scott.
Mr. President, we've heard a heartfelt appeal, and I have no doubt of the sincerity of the sponsor on this. I respect him for that opinion. But there is a good part of the society, I don't know, half or whatnot, that does not believe that. My church teaches differently, that it is the right responsibility of the woman involved to make that decision. And the trouble with this bill is it does not respect that right. And I think because it does not, it violates the First Amendment.
Ready for the question? Senate File 83, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, Senate File 83. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garou? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole?
Aye.
Aye. Cost? No. Landon? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Beg your pardon. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott?
No.
No. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstetter? Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 83, 20 aye, 9 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 83, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 83 has passed the Senate. Senate House Bill 100, Senator Driscoll.
for House Bill 100 to be laid back for 1 day without objection.
Absent objection, House Bill 100 will be laid back 1 day. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we're at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into Committee of the Whole.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Senator Baldwin, you're in charge of the Senate today.
Quit it. Okay. Good morning. The Committee of the Whole will come to order. The first bill for our consideration will be House Bill 7, Commercial Vehicle Driving Disqualifications. Reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 7 engrossed, Commercial Vehicle Driving Disqualification, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, an act relating to commercial vehicles, was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Furphy, McEwen, and Pappas. Excused, Senator Landon. Senator Pappas, Vice Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Pappas? Oh, sorry. I'm new at this job here. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Pappas.
Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable do pass recommendation on House Bill 0007, Commercial Vehicle Driving Disqualifications. And for explanation of this bill, I'll turn it over to our good chairman, Senator Landon.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little traffic back here in the corner. Had to get that cleared away so we could cruise on down the highway. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 7 has as its genesis the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, which published a final rule here not long ago requiring a lifetime ban of commercial driving privileges for anyone connected with felony human trafficking. And we basically have until September of this year to accomplish that, or there is a very real threat that we could lose some highway funding. So that's really what the bill does, Mr. Chairman. It goes in and it aligns our department with federal requirements, which include a couple of lifetime bans for the drivers of our commercial motor vehicles out there. Those two lifetime bans you will see on page 2. We'll get into that language in just a minute. But we will ban for a lifetime if an individual is picked up or has anything to do with human trafficking or drug trafficking. Now, as we get into the bill, it does another couple of things. There's some language change in 317305, Mr. Chairman. That is the statute that describes all the incidents that can trigger a disqualification of your CDL license. And that could be picked up while intoxicated. It could be the result of you causing a fatality through a negligent operation of a vehicle. There are several ways that you can lose for either a year, 5 years, perhaps 10 years, your CDL license. What the language on page 2, if I can take you there, Mr. Chairman, on page 2, you'll notice that we changed that a little bit, and we allow for consideration of a reduction under this subsection. If you have, it just says any person whose disqualification for life has been reduced under this subsection who is subsequently convicted of another disqualifying offense, at that point, they will lose their eligibility for driving privileges for the rest of their life. So we do give some opportunity for a reduction but you better not reoffend. And then we go down into paragraph E under paragraph I and double I, and that's where you run into the lifetime prohibitions that I described a few minutes ago. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'd call for the question. Thank you.
Any questions or discussions, senators? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Pappas' motion when the committee of the whole rises, that we do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 7, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. House Bill 7 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 16, Military Assistance Trust Fund Authorized Tours. Reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 16, Military Assistance Trust Funds Authorized Uses, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, an act relating to Defense Forces and Affairs. It was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Furphy, McEwen, Pappas. Excused, Senator Landon. Senator Pappas, Vice Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Pappas, for a return engagement?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that I do so with a do pass recommendation on House Bill 0016, Military Assistance Trust Fund Authorized Uses. And for explanation of this fine bill, I ask you to call on Senator Anderson.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I move House Bill 16, Military Assistance Trust Fund Authorized Uses. In 2004, the legislature appropriated $5 million to be deposited in a inviolate military assistance trust fund established by Wyoming Statute 197401. So they could only spend the interest off this fund for helping military personnel. The idea was for Wyoming Guard that was called active duty. They did not include our Guard people that spent weekends or weeks on Guard duty. So what has happened is our National Guard that have weekend duty and that kind of thing are having trouble with child care. Some of them are single parents. Some men and women are single parents, and they need some help for that child care. So all this bill does is goes into page 2 and includes any member of the Wyoming National Guard who requires assistance in meeting dependent care responsibilities directly related to their services in the Wyoming National Guard to enable participation without financial hardship to the member or members. So this allows them to apply and get assistance from this fund. This fund currently has $2.2 million in interest income in it, and we have not spent the body or the interest. So there's plenty of money in here to cover this without any general funds. And I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you. Just a quick question on page 2, lines 22 and 23, and over the top on the new language. So this expands this ability for the National Guard, but does it intentionally exclude any Army Reserve or other reserve units? Was that the intent, or is that an oversight? Just a little question about that. I do note that we, up on higher on page 2 on lines 4 through 6, that we do include National Guard or military reserve unit. And 3, we're talking about any performing service in the uniformed services. And so then down below, we're talking about just children of the military. But then in 4, which is the new language, we're excluding that for anybody other than the Wyoming National Guard. Just want to make sure, if that's intentional, that's fine. I just was wondering if that was an oversight or if there's something more there. Thank you.
Any other questions to pile on before he answers? Senator Guru, are you up to speak, sir? No, okay. Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I appreciate the Chairman of Appropriation. Good question. We only talked about the National Guard, to be honest. but that is something that I want to look into and get back to you on. If it goes past committee of the whole, we will get back to that question and provide a better answer. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hudson's man.
I do have a question on page 2, lines 18. It includes the military members, their parents, and their grandparents. It seems like that's kind of a broad stretch. Is there an assumption that the parents and the grandparents are living with them? Can you help explain that to me? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, yes, that does include their parents and grandparents. In a lot of cases, our service people are the caregivers for those people. And if they leave, somebody has to take their place. So they need help with that too. Thank you.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I might be able to clarify the question with the Army Reserve versus the Army National Guard. The National Guard is a state-funded organization, hence we have the ability to affect their funding, or at least partial funding, whereas the Army Reserve is wholly federally funded, so we would not have the ability to affect the Army Reserve in this manner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. Recommendation you've heard by Senator Pappas that when the committee of the whole rises, do so with a favorable consideration. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? House Bill 16 has passed committee of the whole. Senator Rothfuss.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the privilege of the floor?
You may. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I see some readers up in the balcony. I'm not sure which school they're from, but I see them up there, and I thought that I would mention, because it reminded me that today is Read Across America Day, which is also Dr. Seuss's birthday. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I've been thinking a lot about the Appropriations Committee recently, for no particular reason. And I put together a little charge of the appropriators that I'd like to share with the Senate. Mr. Chairman.
Proceed.
Into the conference rode the 5 budgeteers. For the Senate, they shouted, devout to their peers. Hold the line, said our general, as the House horde arrived, depraved and deprived, with amendments contrived. The gathered forces stood equal, no cram down in sight, as the 5 Senate soldiers fiercely entered the fight. Hold the line, said our general, again as they stood, their ground where they should and made gains where they could. But the House horde held strong, their spending unending, no halving or slashing, their wills were unbending. Hold the line, screamed our general through the deafening din, as his patience wore thin. He drew strength from within. And then, like the dawn from the east, did arise a solution, a bridge, a sound compromise. Split the difference, said our general. And so it was done. Objections were none on Senate File 1.
Well done, Senator Rothfuss. Chairman Perkins, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, rebuttal. I wanted to put this out really quick. We would not give away. The Senate's will not go away. Not in a box, not with a fox. Not here or there, not anywhere. Thank you.
Senator Ellis, top that.
I won't even try, Mr. Chairman, but may I have the privilege of the floor?
You may proceed.
I did want to welcome, Senator Rothfuss is right, we do have some readers up in the gallery, but to put a finer point up on it, these are students from Pioneer Park Elementary, which is in Senate District 8. They're 5th graders, and they are joined by their teacher, Riley Connolly. So let's welcome the students from Pioneer Park Elementary.
welcome to the Senate, young men and women, and teachers, who are fairly young too. They're younger than all of us. We hope you learned something here today from the good senators. Okay. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 0017, Veterans Facilities Surrounded by Grazing. The reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 17, Veterans Facilities Surrounded by Grazing, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, an act relating to state lands, was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Furphy, McEwen, and Pappas. Excused, Senator Landon. Senator Pappas, Vice Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Senator Pappas, what is your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hope you're not getting tired of listening to me. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable consideration, do pass recommendation on House Bill 17, Veterans Facilities Surrounded by Grazing. There is a Committee of the Whole amendment. Could we have that read in, please?
House Bill 17, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, page 3, line 11, delete.
Thank you. And for a little bit of information on this bill, I turn it over to my colleague, Senator McEwen.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow senators. This is a fairly simple bill. It deals with, if you look at paragraph B and paragraph D, it describes the actual legal description of the land that surrounds the state veterans cemetery and the veterans home and skilled nursing facility. It sets off a buffer to allow basically a good view shed and keep it open. The one use it can be used for is grazing, and it's really pretty simple. And on that, I'll turn it over to Chairman Landon with the amendment.
Thank you. Senator Landon, would you like to move that amendment, sir?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think that the amendment has been read in, but I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 17. Fellow senators, before I get to that, maybe just a little bit more background as to how we got here in the first place. We have had some struggles in our state lands office. I'm putting that in a very political way. We discovered during this past interim that land surrounding our Oregon Trail Cemetery, where all of our veterans are, was up for sale. And that concerned us greatly because we don't want development around that cemetery. Subsequent to that, we were led to understand and found out that we had bid out the property that surrounds our soldiers and sailors home up in Buffalo to a gravel company, which would be breaking rocks outside the windows of those facilities up there for a gravel operation. Needless to say, we were concerned about that as well. We invited our state lands folks to our meetings. One of the assistants did come and visited with us, but we felt very strongly that this bill was needed. I think it's very appropriate that we try to establish those buffers that the senator talked about, and we put that under the purview of the Adjutant General. And the process continued, and on into the legislature we went with this piece of legislation, and it passed the other house. And the last couple of days, I've had a couple of meetings with our executive branch, and the chief executive has asked that we consider this amendment to the bill. And what it does, if you track it in, it simply moves it back under the purview of the state land commissioners, which is technically where it belongs. It is state land, and it is up to them to oversee this property. I have been assured that the message has been received. The fact that we had some displeasure with what was going on those properties. I would like to think that that's true, and I think, honestly, this is where it belongs. And I think, Mr. Chairman, this amendment probably needs to pass, and we probably need to put it back where it belongs. The oversight of that property really does not belong with the general. It belongs here. And so that's what the amendment does. I'd be happy to answer any questions about what led us up to the bill or what led us to this committee of the whole amendment. Be glad to stand for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, as I read the amendment, it leaves in place the primary purpose of the bill, which is the restrictions on disposition and the restrictions on the use of it, which I think are very, very much needed. Is that a correct reading of the amendment?
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly right. The purpose of the bill does not change. It just simply informs our commissioners that this is what we expect. We want that buffer around these veteran facilities, so it does not change the intent of the bill. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment?
Question?
Are you ready for the question? Question being called. You've heard the motion of Senator Landon on Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to House Bill 17. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to House Bill 17 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Back to the bill. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, on the bill, I am really upset that this body voted on this, where we put this skilled nursing facility, and they were not informed that that area had been leased out to a gravel operation. We never heard one word about that. In fact, we didn't hear about it until it was leased the second time. And then one of the House members called and said, "Did you know about this?" And we did not know about it. We're not informed. Neither was the Veterans Committee or the skilled nursing facility informed that their property had been leased out. So I'm still really upset that the land board could do this to us and that we voted without knowledge of what they were doing. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, just joining with my friend from Natrona County, you know, I have since been informed that maybe the sale of that property around the Oregon Trail Cemetery might have been intended for the military. But your Transportation and Military Affairs Committee was never told anything like that. We had 2 or 3 meetings with our state lands folks, and that was never brought up. I think that legislators in the future, if they want to revisit this statute, I think that we can change that adequately if we decide we want the military to develop that in some fashion. That's what it would take. But for today, I think this bill is much needed to lock that property down, protect those properties and the serenity and the beauty around them. And but I can't speak loudly enough about the fact that our committee was taken a little bit aback on what was going on those 2 properties without the knowledge of the Wyoming Senate. So I hope you'll support the bill. I think we need to put this in place. And in the future, if we want to change our minds and do something with those properties, we can certainly do that. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and forward the bill and the great work of the committee. It sounds like great work was done to protect those special areas in our place. Just a question as it relates to the decision to try to sell that land around Oregon Trail Cemetery up there. Is there enough land currently allotted for the cemetery, or does more land need to be taken for that purpose? Can you just a question for someone who cares?
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, I will try for the second reading. Appreciate that question. We'll try for the second reading to provide a map to you. There is some property up there that allows us for expansion of that cemetery, and there is a little bit of a buffer. This would add to the buffer around that particular facility. And there is quite a little bit of land around that skilled nursing center and Soldiers and Sailors Home there in Buffalo. So I think there's plenty of property and plenty of opportunity for us to grow long before we have to revisit this particular tract of land. But I'll try to print out and get that out to everyone, just so you got a better look at that property, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Further discussion? Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Pappas' motion that when the committee of the whole rises, that House Bill 17 pass committee of the whole, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 17 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 33, Community Health Services Continued Redesign Efforts. Reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 33, Community Health Services Continued Redesign Efforts, sponsored by the Labor Committee, an act relating to public health and safety. It was referred to Committee Number 10, which turned to committee recommendation that it, I beg your pardon, one moment, please. It was referred to Committee Number 10, which turned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, and Hutchings and McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator McEwen?
I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 33 do pass. And to discuss the bill, we have Senator Bouchard.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm presenting to you House Bill 33, Community Health Services Continued Redesign Efforts. What this bill is tied to is 2021, we passed a bill, 17 pages, and what that bill was doing is prioritizing categories of persons that would receive benefits for mental health services from the state. So, by the way, I want to note that I was a no on that bill because it wasn't ready for prime time, and this bill is going to extend the date of what happened in that bill. And so as we go through the bill, I'll just turn to page 2. You can see there are some, there's a lot of moving parts here, and some of this stuff has been renamed. If you look on page 2, you can see the underlined youth crisis shelter, school, primary care provider. There's just a lot of different things moving on as we redesign what's happening in health, in mental health. As we continue on page 2, you'll see that there's the poverty level change. On page 3, change of definitions. Most important thing on this bill is where we start to change the time and the dates of when things take place. That includes reports, not just report on page 4. I'm sure that we are going to get a lot of reports on this connecting to the original House bill that we passed. A lot of moving parts. As we go on to page 5, you'll see that there's date changes again. We have an amendment on this one too. Do we need to read that amendment in?
House Bill 33, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 5, line 10, after.
Would you like to move that amendment, Senator?
I'd like to, I don't have that in front of me, Mr. Chairman. I forgot the amendment. Oh, thank you.
And magically you do. Go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, I'd like to move Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 33. What this amendment does is we've added a reporting amendment on here, basically that we have to report to the committee before this is implemented. And also on further on reporting that there's a and I apologize to the body and the chairman. I did not read this, but I know they redesigned this amendment a little bit here. What we're doing is deleting the request and inserting that it's the intent of the legislature
it is the intent of the legislature that the Department of Health submit an exception budget request. So can we take care of the amendment now?
You bet. Any
Or if there's any
discussion?
questions on the amendment, I'll stand for this.
Discussion or questions on the amendment? Sensen, you're ready for the question? You've heard, you've heard the recommendation by, I believe, Senator Bouchard,
The amendment.
that the amendment, standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 33 do pass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 33 has passed. We're back on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a nutshell, what this bill also does is there are funds that we have had that came into the state, and there's funds that came in right after we passed this bill. Or I'm sorry, right after we passed the bill that this is tied to last year. And this will give us plenty of time to make sure that everything is put in place and the committee has time to review, so that way we can do it in accordance with not only the laws, but it's done smoothly within the state. So anyway, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions or discussion on the bill? Are you ready for the question? The motion to adopt, or excuse me, all those in favor of Senator McEwen's motion when the committee of the whole rises to report to do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 33, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. House Bill 33 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 47, Local Impact Assistance Payments. The reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 47 engrossed. Local Impact Assistance Payments, sponsored by the Minerals Committee, an act relating to impact assistance payments. Was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Anderson, Beitman, Cooper, Rothfuss, and Wasserberger. Senator Anderson, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Chairman? Senator Rothfuss? No? Okay, Senator Rothfuss, go ahead, sir.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 47. I believe it's 47. See, I thought he'd have it, but I pretty much already made the motion. I'll turn it over to the chairman to move the standing committee amendment and then hand it back to me for an explanation, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Would you like that? Would you like that read in, Senator?
House Bill 47, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 4, line 15, delete.
Thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Senator Rothfuss for explanation of.
Moving up the row, we're back to Senator Rothfuss. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel good about that exchange. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 47 was the work of the Minerals Committee during the interim, and it addresses some local impact assistance payments. So this gets back to industrial siting concepts that I think everybody here is familiar with. Industrial siting dates back to the mid-1970s and has provided assistance for large projects since that time, where a portion of the sales and use tax that's generated in that area will be given back to the municipality and county potentially to provide support for that project and to try to mitigate any impacts of that project. Right now, it's for projects with an estimated cost greater than $231 million, or wind energy projects with more than 20 towers, or solar energy projects with a rated capacity over 30 megawatts. The concern that is raised and addressed by this legislation is the fact that those impact payments have increased in recent years due to some changes from about 7 years ago in the legislature. And as a result, there was concern that payments are being provided when not necessarily needed. And the idea that was put into legislation for your consideration today, Senate, is to have a series of different tiers instead of a single tier provided for consideration of the maximum impact payment allowed. So going through the legislation and how that's structured, as well as reviewing some of the additional provisions which were put into this bill, we start off with some changes on page 3, which requires specific findings of fact and a detail of the basis of the total dollar cost determination that would be provided to the city, town, and county. Where there's some vagueness right now, there's a desire for specificity. On to the next page 4. This is where you'll see 2 different times in this bill a gradation of maximum amounts provided. So right now, the maximum under industrial siting is a full 2.76%, which is the state's share of sales and use tax, where the entire amount of that could be provided back to the community for a period of time as impact assistance payments. The bill as drafted would provide 3 different levels for caps, where for smaller projects, those less than $350 million, as drafted, the maximum would be 2.55% rather than 2.76%. And you'll see that the proposed standing committee amendment will change that back to 2.76% maximum under a circumstance where an appeal can be made. Under the circumstance of $350 million to $850 million, that maximum would be 2% rather than 2.76. And over $850 million, it would be a maximum of 1.5%. Those values were negotiated between the legislative proponents of this bill and your association that represents your counties. On to page 6 are some additional provisions about annual payments and reporting. On to page 7 is a new concept which we don't particularly have well defined in statute about the idea of specifically giving funds for an unmitigated impact and defining that better, where those are expenses that would be incurred by a county, city, or town directly or indirectly attributable to the construction of an industrial facility. There was concern that the money was being used for just things that were needed as opposed to things that were specifically needed because of the project. So it's trying to narrow in on the use of the expenditures that are provided to the cities, towns, and county, and that is not otherwise mitigated by any other entity. And then you can see in the C paragraph, for medical service, fire, and law enforcement services, roads, public utilities, et cetera, and provide some more definitions there. On to page 8, explicitly excludes expenses for which a county, city, or town previously received an impact assistance payment unless the county, city, or town can demonstrate the expenses are new or ongoing, which is another concern that was raised by the proponents of the legislation. Moving on to page 9, conforming language and mirrored language. This is just elsewhere in statute, so you see that we basically have a repeat of the language that we previously discussed elsewhere in statute. On to page 13, again, mirrored language. That ends up going through all of the provisions. So the intent here is to provide better reporting, provide better justification, and narrow the limits of the maximum amount allowed for the industrial siting payments to for local assistance. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I will go to the standing committee amendment. I don't believe it's been moved. I'll move it right now. I move standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 47. Ask the body's favorable consideration. Mr. Chairman, there was discussion about an allowance, which you'll see on page 4, line 15, which would allow the council to increase the maximum allowable percentage to not more than 2.55% if the council includes in the specific findings required under this subsection that the maximum allowable percentage is not sufficient. So that's a finding that has to be made, reported within 10 days, and that is only specific to the less than $350 million category. The standing committee amendment changes that in 2 places, from 2.55% to 2.76%, which is the maximum possible, which would provide more flexibility for your local communities on the large projects if they have specific needs. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the standing committee amendment. If not, I'd call for the question.
Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, are you ready for the, oh, Senator Anderson.
Did you talk about page 11, where it changes it there also?
Senator Rothfuss.
Mr. Chairman, I said that it was mirrored and that it happened in two places. It's identical. So do it not once, but twice.
Any further mirror questions? Sensing you're ready for the question, all those in favor of Senator Anderson's motion to amend the committee, or to adopt standing committee amendment of the whole amendment number 1 to House Bill 47, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Standing committee amendment 1 to House Bill 47 has passed committee of the whole. Back to
Mr.
the
Chairman,
bill.
is your mic on?
I thought so. It says so.
It does? Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. Again, it's a discussion that we had during the interim regarding better reporting requirements, narrower payment assistance parameters, and to me, the most important bit would be the definition of the unmitigated impact and incorporating that, because there were some concerns that we heard regarding that parameter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question about this. This is out of the Industrial Siting Commission. These are the mitigation impact assistance payments. And as I understand, the bill is now amended. I think we changed this. There was I don't remember if we changed it. I think we changed this down to 2.76 a year or so ago. And so, as I understand the bills, it happens now. That now it's a lower amount, but you can go up to the 2.7% if there are certain things that you present that are unmitigated. I just want to make sure that's what it does. I think that's what I understand it to do. You can go up to the 2.76 maximum now, as long as you can add between the 2.55 up to 2.76 if it's an unmitigated impact. You determine there's a affirmative determination, then you can give that additional amount. I just want to clarify and make sure that I understand that now it's amended. The other thing a comment, Mr. Chairman, about this is it's really important to think about these things. What these are when you make these mitigation impact assistance payments, they are we have this legislature, it has opened up the checkbook to the general fund in these instances. These are amounts that are coming directly out of the general fund, and basically you're anticipating that those will be up sometime in the future based upon the economic benefit of the industrial siting facility that comes in there. But the two things I think it's always important to remember about this program is that one, you don't know what that is. We don't appropriate for that. That is basically, we've opened the general fund checkbook to the Industrial Siting Commission. The other thing that happens is those numbers are based off the initial estimates of what I think the material cost is. Kind of like not the labor, but it's the amounts that are going to be, the items that are purchased that are going to go into whatever that industrial siting facility. So it's the value of the steel and the concrete and the carbon fiber, whatever it is you're putting in those things. And it's off the estimate. And ultimately, those estimates oftentimes are significantly lower than what the estimate is, but you're still paying based upon the estimate. So when we deal with these things, it's nice to look at those things, but it's really, really important to remember that these are all based off estimates, and they are direct. These are payments that, like I say, we're giving the Industrial Siting Commission the ability to write those checks directly out of the general fund without, that's the only oversight you get is controlling those percentages. So it's been a very valuable program. It's made a lot of difference in communities that are heavily impacted by the Industrial Siting Commission. And those impacts include everything from impact on cultural resources, because there may have been some kind of buffalo wallow, to Native American, to economic effects, to effects on water and sewer, to effects on fire and other emergency, medical care, police, all those things. So there's a broad gamut. It's a long list of, I think, probably over 20, certainly over 15 different items they look at. But so I'm not opposing the bill. I'm just trying to make sure members remember this program and that it's very interesting. That's probably the only place we open up the general fund checkbook and let somebody else write checks other than the legislature. Thank you.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, to answer that question about the up to 2.76. That's very, very correct. And the Industrial Siting Council has been real careful. They have not just awarded up to that 2.76. In fact, they've awarded 62% of the maximum allowable award, approximately 48 million less than counties and municipalities were eligible for, according to our testimony. The problem that we see in these smaller projects, like the 350 million and smaller, they go into a smaller county and the goods may be delivered to another county. So that county gets the sales tax off of it, and the smaller county does not get that much assistance because it's limited here. So this is for the smaller counties, smaller communities that'll have those smaller, and 350 million doesn't sound too small, but we've got a lot larger projects than that. And this helps the smaller projects to be able to have the county afford the impact. So I agree and ask for your favorable consideration.
Further discussion, further discussion. Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Rothfuss' motion when the committee of the whole rises to do so with a favorable report on House Bill 47, please say aye. Opposed, say no. House Bill 47 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 49, Election Reporting Requirements. You heard the reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 49 engrossed, Election Reporting Requirements, sponsored by the Corporations Committee, an act relating to elections. It was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. Senator Case, no. Senator Driscoll, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a favorable recommendation that House Bill 49 engrossed do pass. Thank you, folks. This is a good bill that came to us. We all know about the electioneering that goes on. We've had it on statute for many years. This bill tightens that statute up. We've all seen the mailers that come out and the things that go on in elections in between that go bump in the night. We don't know where they came from. And this is an attempt to make sure the reporting's done, you know who's doing it, where the money's coming from, and where it's at. So I'll go right to the bill, and we'll have some amendments, but I'll go ahead and go into the bill, and then we'll come into the amendments in just a minute. So this starts out on the first couple pages of the bill. We find some definitions on what they are, and that was some of the weakness we had in it. And you go to page 2, line 5, starting into it. Organization receives contributions, $1,000, the break point on it. If you spend more than $1,000 as an organization, you're going to have to do it. It's considered electioneering communication. Goes on through existing statute on it. What we're requiring is the name and mailing address of the organization. Bottom of page 2, name and mailing organization of the chairman and treasurer, if applicable, designee, so we know where to go to. Top of page 3, the date you formed it, and the purpose of the organization. You have to say what you're doing. That gives an ID on it. Middle of page 3, little Romanette II. If you're going to support or oppose any initiative, referendum, petition, drive, or any ballot proposition, you're going to have to file a formation for purpose of reporting your expenditures within 10 days of receiving or expending funds for the purpose of supporting or opposing it. Going to Romanette III. Any organization cause or intends to cause independent expenditure, electioneering, and this is where it happens at. So this isn't all year. Primary, general, or special election. This is the times it happens. You file your deal and you have to do it within 10 days. Goes through that. You haven't done it, talks about it. Cause an independent or electioneering to be made. On to page 4, back to the 10 days. We keep going back to it. You've got that period. You have to file a statement of formation reporting it. You have to do it within 24 hours making the expenditure. So that gets it on. The balance, page 4, 5, and 6, top of page 7 are all existing language that's already there. So it kind of goes into it. We drop into page 7 at the bottom, line 20. Goes back to the organization, means any corporation, partnership, trade union, professional association, civic, fraternal, or religious group, or any other profit or nonprofit entity, or any other entity influencing an election except a candidate's campaign committee, political action committee, or political party. So your own political committees for re-election are exempted out of this part of it. The definitions, we went into it in committee, an individual can go spend all the money they want. They can spend $1 million, don't have to file any reports. Any two people that go in together is considered a political action committee. So if you're getting a group of you to go together, do newspaper ads, you're gonna have to file something. If it's you individually, you do not have to. Then we move on to the page 8. Line 8 says, except as otherwise provided. These are our exceptions. We struck out part of those exceptions on line 9 through 14, and because that's picked up later. That definition is what I just explained to you. We go to page 9. They struck out corporation on line 4 and inserted after person. Political party, political action committee, campaign committee. Goes back through. We end up back on page 10. On line 14, we struck out after organization of any kind specified, and this once again picked up, and then we entered back in political party, political action committee, or candidates campaign committee. Inserts it back in, that brings it back in under that section. On to page 11, this is the prohibitions. Shall not be construed to prohibit any organization, and we struck of any kind, including a corporation, partnership. That's back to the, we've tied that all back in. We've struck it out and added it back in. On to page 12, we're in existing language. Line 16, it used to be $500. This has now been moved to $1,000 of what triggers on it. Moving on to page 13 of the bill, talks about who signs it. And if you go to Romanet 6, be signed by both the chairman and treasurer of the organization if these positions are present, or by the organization's designee. In the past, it was the person who caused it, the deal. It can be a designee now. Line 7, reports or statements filed under this section shall be filed under the penalty of perjury. And that's the meat of what really puts teeth in this bill. In the past, there wasn't any real penalties that were enforceable. This is a perjury penalty. If you lie on your form and get proved, you're going to be charged with perjury. You go down 22, 25, 107 where they're filed. We've just added in organization back in and organization that causes it. Move back in, talks about where it's at in the county. And then down at the bottom of page 14 is the fine section. And this is where the amendment comes in. I'm gonna go ahead and read it, and then we'll read in the amendment. On line 20, it read $500 per day beginning on the date of the final order and ending when this report is filed. And on page 15, it's the same thing. It's $200 per day beginning on the final day of the order when the report is filed with the county clerk. One's with the Secretary of State. With that, I'd ask for the standing committee amendment to House Bill 49, number 1, be read in.
House Bill 49, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, to engrossed copy, page 14, line 20, after.
I move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 49 engrossed and ask for your favorable consideration. Both of those sections I just read to you, the fine of $500 and the fine of $200, we inserted up to. And that gives either your county clerk or the Secretary of State the ability to have some leeway on that. They can charge you up to $500 or up to $200 a day. But if you give the circumstances, you were out of the country, you didn't know, you didn't understand it, they've got some leeway in those fines under that. That's the meat of the bill. There is another amendment on it. Senator Case, would you like to do your amendment this time, or would you like to take questions on the bill?
Would you like to vote on the amendment first?
Thank you. Ask for your favorable consideration, Senator.
Discussion on the amendment, Senator Scott.
And Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, on and for the amendment, the purpose here is giving them some flexibility. And think about, we've all seen who runs in some of these elections. We're afraid that if somebody who wasn't particularly sophisticated in some of these reportings won or ran, got defeated, and didn't understand about filing the reports and whatnot, they could get really nailed. And that's not the intent. That would have a chilling effect on people running. So that's what this is to do, is to make it easier for people to be able to run and not be put in fear of having tremendous fines. So I'd urge the adoption of the amendment.
Further discussion on the amendment. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Driscoll's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 49, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 49 has passed Committee of the Whole. Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask for Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 49 and gross be read in, please.
House Bill 49, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 3, delete.
That's my amendment, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 49. Mr. Chairman, I'm not entirely comfortable with this bill, and I voted against it in committee. I do definitely understand what it's trying to do. It's trying to capture people that deceive our voters, that don't disclose where the money comes from, maybe pretend like they're not really on the issue, but they really are on the issue, and it happens a lot. That's terrible. But I'm also worried that under the definition of entity, it literally means anything except for individuals. So that is a big catch in my mind, Mr. Chairman. So that literally means that if you're in a coffee shop and you and your buddy decide to raise money for a newspaper ad to support a ballot proposition or a candidate, you say, I'll put in $500, you put in $500, or maybe it's $1,000 a piece, whatever the limits are, and you want to take a newspaper ad, you're caught up in this. You can't do that unless you're prepared to form a political action committee, file the reports, do everything that's required of any other entity. Well, I look at that and I think about the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which talks about freedom of speech. Is this a chilling effect on freedom of speech? I think it is. And then I also think about that amendment where it talks about the right to assemble to petition your government. You have the right to band together and to do political activity. So I'm looking for the balance, Mr. Chairman. And I thought about it, if you put an ad, newspaper ads are, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Newspaper ads are kind of a convenient thing, but that's probably not what mostly we're talking about, but just pretend that it is. Maybe it's a signature ad, or maybe 3 people get together and take out a full-page ad. And what I'm trying to say here is that if you're truthful in that ad, you disclose who you are, and you don't deceive anybody. So then that should be taken into consideration when you get in front of the Secretary of State and the county clerk about the fine. So the amendment says that in assessing that fine, they need to give due consideration to the willfulness of the failure to file, the person's level of experience with reporting requirements under this act, and efforts made to obscure the identity of the person required to file, and any other factor evidencing an intent to evade reporting requirements under this act. I'm trying to protect free speech. You put your name on the ad. This ad is paid for by a group of coffee shop at the Summit Cafe in Lander, Wyoming, and KLK's chairman. That should make something about the intent, the illegality, and that should stand for something. And that should protect free speech, and that's why I bring the amendment. Ask for your support.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment. I think it provides Nice little safety measures that makes, I think, everyone in the Corporations Committee feel comfortable with a good bill.
Senator Driscoll.
Not quite, everybody. I'm going to stand opposed to it, and here's why, folks. I do it with trepidation. If you go to page 14, and I went over it fairly fast, here's the procedure of what happens should the coffee shop boys get together or whatever is. They place the ad, and maybe it has their name at the bottom of it, maybe it doesn't. Somebody tracks it down, figures it out. Either way. And it says on line 11, it says, you've got 21 days from the date to notice, so that when the complaint comes into the Secretary of State or your clerk, you've got 21 days. They send you a notice. From the date the notice goes out, you got 21 days to respond to that notice, and you'll get it. And if you don't respond to the notice, you'll get a final order, or you can respond to it, which means you probably file a piece of paper and do it. But if you don't, then you'll get a final order comes out. And on line 13 it says, final order should be sent to the person, their address, record, notify a person the right to request reconsideration. You got a chance to say, I'd like to reconsider this now that you've got the final order. You've said I did my First Amendment right, I did everything, but now you can reconsider it. Precise subsection H to this section. Filing officer, county attorney shall impose the following civil penalties. So what it says is you've got 21 days, then you can ask for reconsideration. And then even after that, when you're done, they can still reduce the fine to zero, doing exactly what this amendment says. They're going to hear the argument, and they have the ability to reduce it to zero. And I think we're just putting another section in there that's a potential, another loophole, and that's the problem we got with electioneering laws, is these loopholes, the guys that run all around them and use the loophole. And I represent to you, I don't think anybody on final orders, the 4 guys at the coffee shop that spent $1,500 is going to impose a fine on them. So I'd ask you to resist it.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, on and for the amendment, if one of the problems you've got in this area, and one of the reasons we need this amendment, is that you may well not know how much you're actually spending. You've got a $1,000 trigger. You can see that on page 12, line 16, 17. And it's my experience with, say you buy a newspaper ad and they also sell you an online ad in their online version that they bill according to how much usage they were. And my experience is that bill comes in a good deal later than 21 days. And you have quite a delay before you really even know how much you've spent, how much you should be reporting, and whether you, maybe even, given the magnitude of things here, whether you even need to report at all. So I think this amendment, which gives the Secretary of State's office the leeway to use some more leeway to use some common sense on this, I think it's a good addition. I would urge its adoption.
Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, I think if you read Part F on page 14 of the bill about the 21 days and the notice and people tracking you down and the thought police and checking up on these ads and coming and sending you, that's pretty Orwellian, if you want my opinion. And Mr. Chairman, I think my amendment brings a little bit of common sense and also really illuminates that we have the right to free speech. We have the right to assemble and petition our government. That needs to be taken in consideration. Ordinary people caught up in this bill, they're not even going to know this law. They're just mad about something and they want to put it in a paper. And if they put their name on it, amen, that's America.
Senator Driscoll. Oh,
No, I'm going to stand up.
go ahead, Senator Driscoll.
All right.
Senator Office. Senator Driscoll.
I don't want to belabor this. I'm fine with it, folks. If you want to vote for it, it's fine. But You know, what we're really saying is, we're not stifling First Amendment rights. 21 days doesn't come in, folks, until it's been filed. It's not the ad comes in late or the bill comes in late. The testimony was the only time they ever pursue these is when somebody files a complaint. Well, that's after all the ads are done, and it's probably not going to be over someone that did ads. It's about a big mailer or whatever, and what we're doing now is a dog ate my homework excuse. So you got someone, a group of guys that spent $20,000, and somebody stands up and says, we didn't understand and we didn't know. And that's what I'm trying to stop. Is I don't mind the 4 guys in the paper, and I don't think anybody's going to complain about it. If it's your local paper, don't think you're going to see it, particularly if they put their name on it. But if it's a mailer that went out to a whole district, and they said, well, you know, we live in Iowa, and it doesn't have that law. And, you know, we just got together and we sent it out. We don't know anything about it. Well, folks, the damage has been done. It's over. And there is no teeth, and there is no penalty, because we just put in, the dog ate my homework. And we're all really good about, when we're up front, having a great excuse for what happened. And to me, the latitude's there. When you look at the up to 500, that's the piece that gets it to you, is when you go there, now you have the county clerk and the Secretary of State, either one of them, can say, look, we're going to say, don't do it again, and the fine's 0. And what you're saying is you don't trust them to be able to move it to 0. And my guess is they'll do it. I know my county clerk, if it's an honest accident done by somebody in our county, she's certainly not going to fine somebody. I'd encourage you to resist it, and let's let our elected people do their jobs and be able to do it when you got a bad actor, be able to deal with them.
Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, this isn't about bad actors. This is about ordinary citizens that are in your district that get caught up in this. And we're moving into a world where speech is increasingly policed. And that's the danger. The danger is that the government gets to decide the conditions and the situation of speech. This whole bill is about that. And maybe there's really good reason for the bill, Mr. Chairman. But I'm trying to help where there's no willfulness, there's disclosure, then it ought to be clear that the government needs to cut you a little slack. I'm not comfortable with fines that have the word may in front of them and know that the government's going to treat its citizens correctly all the time. I'm not comfortable there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Case's motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 49, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No. The chair is in doubt because his hearing aids are low today. All those in favor, please stand. Okay, they may sit. All those opposed, please stand. The vote is 16-14. That amendment passes. We're back on the bill. Further discussion on the bill, Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's amazing about this bill is what's not. You know, it doesn't talk about electioneering versus issue advocacy. I said at one point that I was going to talk about the NAACP versus Alabama. That was brought up before. I said there was a bill coming that was worthy of talking about this case. In the case of NAACP versus Alabama, in 1958, we're down there advocating for their rights. And the government wanted a bunch of rules and regulations. I'm similar to this bill. similar form, it's just a different set of tyrants. So the reason that issue advocacy is important, because it doesn't say vote for. It doesn't say elect that person. It doesn't say unelect this person. It's talking about an issue. There are plenty of court cases, even recent ones. There are ones in 501c3s, C4s, federal court cases say that this stuff doesn't work. You will be in a bigger lawsuit than there is now. There is a lawsuit. As a matter of fact, under 2225, Wyoming statute 2225, 106H, the court has already said that under case law, it's unlikely it would survive because of these kind of reports. Bottom line is free speech matters. If free speech is crushed, and that's on both sides of issues, it doesn't matter what side. I don't agree with, I'm pointing to it, but I like this free speech to be protected too. We'll disagree. We will disagree adamantly, but his free speech is just.
Senator Driscoll, point of order.
I just got someone got a hold of me, said his mic's not on. They can't hear you.
I think it's just, go down closer to your mic, please.
Sorry to interrupt you.
So, look, this is free speech. Issue advocacy is a big deal.
Let's take a pause for a moment. Let's use a different microphone for a minute. Let me turn you off and then back on. Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Man, I don't know if I have to start over or not. Well, it's to try to go back and what's in this bill and what's not in the bill is basically this bill is saying that we have to fill out a form that you really don't have to fill out in the first place if you were just being an issue advocate. And that's where the court cases have been. Like I said, if someone doesn't say, vote for this person, vote for that person, or issue even I'm looking for the right word, but if there was a ballot initiative or anything like that, it's also been, if you're not saying vote for or vote against, the courts have upheld that it's a different thing than just electioneering. It's basically a free speech issue when it is issue advocacy. More importantly, most of the 501c3s and C4s that I've seen, they actually put who they are on the mailing. And other thing this bill does not do, and we have seen things that have been mailed out, and when you go down, I personally went down and looked myself, and they're behind a registered agent. That's totally different than what's even in this bill. Because there are groups that will put who they are. Everyone knows who they are. Everyone knows the name of the people in the group. They're not hiding. But we haven't heard any talk about these groups that have done things over the years. There was a group that sent out a mailing, and it talked about an amendment in the budget, and it named it as if it was a bill. And it was totally bad information against a legislator in Uintah County, saying that he was against he was for the coal, basically that he was for going against coal in our state when he was a pro-coal legislator. This thing went out, and I can't say their name on the floor, but this thing went out with a name that sounded like it was a Wyoming thing. And when I went and checked it out, it was hidden behind registered agents, and nobody would cough up who they were. There has been multiple mailings like that with different names. This bill doesn't do anything to that. It doesn't address that. It doesn't make that a felony in this state. It's only saying that if you send anything out, even if it's an issue advocacy, you're going to have to do these requirements. And I'm telling you right now, I can tell you for sure, you will be in a lawsuit. And it won't be just a Wyoming group, it'll be a national group, because free speech is important and we have to protect it. So on and against the bill. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that is exactly the rub. And I'm a First Amendment guy. I began my professional career as a newspaper journalist. I care a lot about it, and I just voted for a provision in this bill brought by the senator from Lander that I think speaks to that. But I will tell you that back home, Mr. Chairman, I have a lot of constituents who come up to me all the time, and they just want to know who's saying what. And that's the piece of the bill that I can't completely get my arms around. I wish we could do more to help people. Most of them believe in free speech too, just like I do. But there is a lot of concern out there by people in my neighborhood who say, who's doing this? I hope we're ready for what's going to happen this coming year, Mr. Chairman. I read an article the other day from somebody who knows, and we're going to have more dark money spent in the next few months in the state of Wyoming than ever in the history of the state. I just wonder if we're ready for it. I hope this helps. I don't know if it will, but I know that the one issue that I get the most at coffee shops around my neighborhood is, who's lobbing the grenades from over there behind the hedge? Hey, we're all grown-ups. We're all in this business, and we can defend just about anything, but it is kind of nice to know, who's your accuser and who's doing these things. So that's a concern. There's a balance in there somewhere. I hope we can find it and keep working on it. This bill seems to be a start. I'm going to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the bill, and I'm going to come at it a little bit different than we've heard in prior speakers. We had an issue, shockingly, in the area of the Sweetwater, where we had actually a special election, and it was for a specific purpose tax increase, ballot proposal, 1%. Well, there was an effort made by an unknown group. Nobody knew where the money came from. Nobody would admit to where the money came from. For a county-wide mailer, for signs that miraculously went up when they first went up, there was absolutely no information on them about paid for by who. And we really, it's come down to government funding a tax initiative. In fact, government was funding it. Trying to trace that back, short of a lawsuit, didn't happen. But I believe this bill would go a long ways to getting some transparency, because people were, taken back on where did this money come from. And the party that I belong to opposed this initiative, and there was no information about who was in fact really behind the funding. There was newspaper investigations, but no, in fact, absolute answer to somebody spending over $30,000 on trying to promote a tax initiative that in fact would help the said governments that the funding came from. There was numerous ones. I just want to throw that out there as something that happened, and it's real. I believe light is always better than darkness, and I support this bill.
Senator
Thank you.
Brightman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the bill. I think this is a real dangerous step against our First Amendment. And imagine back in the founding of this country in the 1700s, when the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers were being published, if this law were in place, it would have changed the course of history. This has a chilling effect on free speech. It must be defeated. And I call on we can't pass this bill because we're going to get sued caucus to come out against this bill and stick to your principles. If those are your principles, that we can't pass bills if we know we're going to get sued.
we will get sued again if we pass this bill, and it will go to the Supreme Court if necessary, because this is a fundamental right, free speech issue that this bill tramples all over free speech, on and against.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the purposes of debate for Committee of the Whole, it would be helpful for me to hear why the allegations associated with the First Amendment apply. So I've heard everybody say, you're going to get sued, it's a violation of the First Amendment, but there's a failure to articulate the reasoning why behind that. It's a violation of the First Amendment. What about the bill is unconstitutional, other than it's a violation of the First Amendment? So let's work the bill and have an in-depth conversation instead of allegations from any caucus. A couple of things to be mindful of about the speech that is affected here, which is only that electioneering communication as it relates to an actual campaign. So the bill is limited in scope to its effect as it relates to a primary, general, or some type of special election. So general speech that anyone may make at any other time is not affected by this bill. So for example, oftentimes religious organizations purchase billboards advancing particular issues, not affected by this bill, not affected whatsoever. That kind of effort continues, and this bill is not intended to address that, nor does it. A couple of other things that I think is really important for this body to consider, which is a review of Title 22-25-101 for what already is unlawful and what isn't unlawful. So the concerns presented by the senator from Fremont County of the two friends at the local coffee shop buying a fancy ad and the government's going to come down on them, that's already in the law about a political action committee. It's been in the law on the books since 1977. So these concerns about transparency in our elections have been around for a very long time, and there are prohibitions associated with them that have withstood judicial scrutiny and constitutional interpretation. It also applies to reporting campaign advertising, which includes organizations. So what this bill does, and you can see that in 22-25-110, and I think a good review of our statutory section as it relates to this is important for further allegations associated with the unconstitutionality of the bill. So really the bill does is just add in this concept more specifically. It puts in a little bit more detail so the public and those actors have a clearer understanding of what is and isn't allowed and who should and shouldn't provide a formation. I just think that there's a lot of fear about the bill that is probably unnecessary because it's all really already in the statute, in the act. It's just more clearly defined with some penalties associated with the violations of those, which are somewhat ambiguous as they currently exist.
Senator Rothfuss.
One more time. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
There we go. Now it's green. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm still interested in honestly understanding better what this legislation does, because I think there are conflicting interests, obviously, and this is always a tension for us. All of these election law and campaign finance and speech laws become challenging because they do bring into tension a variety of rights, and that's when we always have the most challenge, Mr. Chairman. But as I read through this, I don't see why it closes the door well on bad actors, particularly with penalty provisions that would not be in any way daunting to a bad actor. But it would potentially be daunting and bureaucratic to a good actor that might see their speech chilled, where it really is just somebody or a group of friends, our coffee shop example, that wants to get together. It might be effective at stopping them or penalizing them. I think we all share the concern of third parties from around the globe that are injecting misinformation, are buying opportunity for that misinformation to manipulate our election process and to work against those democratic principles. I'm going to guess everyone here shares that concern. Perhaps I'm wrong. I'm going to guess, Mr. Chairman, that everyone here shares the belief and value of ensuring that every individual has their First Amendment freedoms, their ability to engage in the democratic process as they see fit, and to provide their views and to participate in free speech. So we agree at the ends. The question I have is getting to the details, which I still don't understand, of what this actually stops that we're trying to stop, and that does it well so that it would be stopped, which, Mr. Chairman, I'm quite honestly not seeing. We have seen some incredible access to loopholes in recent years for things that we thought we had nailed down, where hundreds of thousands of dollars would go to individual candidates by just having a couple of two-step processes that provide a nice conduit. And I don't see anything that stops that here. That's a concern. But again, it seems, Mr. Chairman, if you've got enough money, you'll get right around this. And those are the folks we're worried about. And if you don't have those resources, this is a challenge, and that's what we're worried about. So I do want to understand more. I don't understand fully what this is going to accomplish. Some scenarios of what you can do now or what has happened that this would definitively take care of. That's exactly what I'd like to hear, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Chairman. I was handed this by the other practicing lawyer on the side over here that sits in front of me, and it makes a good point. If you go and go to the existing law right now, 2225-110, campaign advertising and communications media. This is current law. It is unlawful for a candidate, political action committee, organization, including organizations causing an electioneering communication or an independent expenditure to be made. Candidates, campaign committee, or any political party central committee to pay for a campaign literature or campaign advertising without conspicuously displaying or speaking the following disclosure: paid for by name of candidate, blah, blah, blah. So that those disclosures we're all familiar with. And then the disclosure set forth in this subsection shall be required in the following forms of campaign literature or campaign advertising: printed campaign literature, including mailers, pamphlets, brochures, periodicals, billboards. Beer boards, that would be good if somebody invented a beer board. But anyway, campaign advertising, appearing on the radio or distributed through a telephone or cellular system, campaign advertising appearing on television, paid placement of campaign advertising on the internet or other electronic communications network. And then this paragraph shall not apply when including disclosure is impractical due to the size and limitations of size and text limitations in electronic campaign advertising, provided that the campaign advertising shall include a hyperlink to an internet website containing disclosure. And so that's what this does. That's what the current law is. And as I read this bill, I don't see anything in there that this makes illegal that's not already illegal. But what this bill does do is it provides some safe harbors for those who are engaging in those activities. You can provide these reports, you can do these things. If you do these things, you got a safe harbor. Well, there's no currently safe harbor in the existing statute. So as we talk about free speech, there's nothing that's prohibited by this bill that's not already prohibited by statute. But what you do is you have a fleshed out version of where you report, how you create a safe harbor, so when you do these things, you're not subject to the penalties and prohibitions related to campaign advertising. So that's my interpretation on the bill. And so I think we're getting a little bit far afield on what it does and what it doesn't do. Now, the problem with the existing statute, it doesn't, so you have that, but doesn't tell you how you go about doing that, how you go about discharging those obligations, and also doesn't provide any particular penalties other than some references to, I think, some general penalties in the back. So if in my view, it simply makes it clear and also makes it clear what the penalty is for violations. If you think the violations are too high, you can always bring an amendment to lower them. If you think they're too low, you can bring an amendment to higher them. But ultimately, it is a good form of government to make it clear what you can and can't do and how you make sure that you when you do engage in that activity, that you know what your obligations are and how to perform them.
Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the bill. My biggest concern in here is where it refers to influencing an election on the bottom of page 7. So I don't know about the rest of you, but if I see someone's voting record, that would influence me. If someone states something and they back it up with verifiable facts, that might influence me. And that's where the limitation on people's free speech would probably come in, because you're preventing people from stating facts, backed up with evidence. And that's the biggest issue, influencing an election. I get where you're trying to go, but influencing covers a big range. So on and against the bill.
Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to what I said in my first time up, I said we will get sued because of the chilling effect. And I'll repeat, the chilling effect on free speech, which refers to a phenomenon where individuals or groups refrain from engaging in expression for fear of running afoul of a law or regulation. Going back to my friend's analogy of the 3 men in the coffee shop, say their fourth buddy shows up and says, "Hey guys, did you know there's a new law in Wyoming that says if we do this, we got to go through all this paperwork and we could be fined, all this money. Maybe we shouldn't do this because we don't know enough about all this and we don't want to hire an attorney to tell us how to get around this law. So maybe we'll just not do it. It's better to be safe than sorry." That, my friends, is the chilling effect. Vote no.
Senator Driscoll.
I'll be fairly brief, just going to correct a few things. Back to chilling effect. Law's on the books, just got read. If it's going to be chilled, it's probably chilled a number of years ago because it's been on the books for a long time. It's not last year's law. I've been here 10 years. I can't remember when it came, but it's been there a long time. So what's there is already there, folks. If you really, really think we're going to get sued, it probably would have happened a long time ago. I'm kind of doubting there's going to be a lawsuit that deals with it. Really what this does is defines what's already on the books. And that's why you saw me go through pages in that bill, is it defines what's there and it puts a perjury penalty into it. Makes you do what you say you're going to do. That's what perjury does. And it does that anyway. Back to posting voting records and what you do, absolutely no effect on it. An individual can go out and post all the voting records. You can pay for ads to do it. You can put websites up. You can do whatever you want. It does not stop facts from coming out in any way. Does not stop that. So let's be really clear about what it does and doesn't do. What it doesn't do is chill the ability to post facts. Doesn't stop it. Those that are out there won't be attacked. They can't be, they won't be, particularly individual ones. If you're doing it as a group and you're paying to put that out there, you're probably going to have to actually say who you are doing it. And it still doesn't affect whether it's the truth or not. The interesting part's this: there is no truth in advertising and campaigns. You can put what you want up there, and this bill doesn't stop bad things being put out or facts being put out. That's what you have to do when you go out on the road and campaign at your neighbor's house and what you do. But you certainly can't say what's right, what's wrong, what's truth, and what's not truth. Because we all know there's variances that lay in between how you spin it. So let's really stick to the bill. Let's take a look at what's on statute. It's already there. So you're not undoing anything. By defeating this, you just fall back to the old one that's not as clearly defined. And that's what this bill does. It puts a little sharper edge on what's out there. So be really serious about what you think you're doing, what you're not doing, because by defeating it, you haven't stopped any of that. It's already in the green books.
Senator Bouchard. Oh, you're off. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I hear is, no, there's no chilling effect. Everything's fine. Just pass what we got. There's no lawsuits. We're not going to go there. Nobody's done it yet. There is a lawsuit. You know, when we talk about the chilling effect, that's exactly what happened in the 1950s. Think about that time and what happened then. And when it wasn't enough when they were wearing hats that said NAACP. And there wasn't enough that they had it on their shirts. And it wasn't enough they had it on the brochures. They wanted all the names. They wanted all the names of the people who were in that group. That's a chilling effect, because that group wouldn't have survived. Everybody would have, the money would have dried up. There would have been no more people saying, hey, we're with you. They would have all went away. They would have stopped sending money in envelopes. Free speech would have been squashed. And that's what the Supreme Court said. See, now, understand it's not that the NAACP couldn't put their name. It didn't say they didn't have to do that. It didn't say that anywhere. What it was doing was this, it was stopping some form of doxing for people being on lists that were published. That's what's going on here. We're not doing anything to the people that actually break the law on this one, because there are people that, like I said, they put stuff on a registered agent. Nobody knows who they are. They'll drop a bunch of mailings. The funny thing is, you know what I've seen? The people that have dropped those mailings have been against conservatives. Doesn't seem like it's so important to go after them. This will be a lawsuit because it has to do with 501c3s and 501c4s. They are registered. Everyone knows who they are. And they actually do mail on issues. That's why it's important, because this is already established in case law. And we are not, in this bill, we are not discriminating the difference between issue advocacy and electioneering. That's the issue here. That's where the discrepancy will be in a lawsuit. It is a chilling effect. It's a chilling effect on people who decide to be part of a 501c4 or a 501c3. They do that because they do not want to be published. And that's okay. That's what the laws are in the books. Unless we do this and we don't define those differences and we just lump everybody out there, it's going to cause a problem. It's coming. If we pass this bill, that problem is coming.
Are you ready? Yep, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About transparency. I think transparency probably works in a lot of different areas. But before I got here, you know, we had issues in where I come from about governments funding money to promote taxes. And this bill does deal with that for public information, where the money came from, how it's flowing. And I didn't come this far to give up on the idea that we need to have transparency in government, need to have people held accountable for what they do and make it publicly known, and let the public decide. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to read to you the statutory section, but I do think it's important, and important for the public to hear in light of the debate. So 2225-101, definitions and statements of formation. So this concept of statements of formation that you see in the bill is not new and has been on the books since 1977. And it states a political action committee, which we learned testimony, a political action committee really can be just two people coming together. It's not one person, so it's 1+. It can be 500, it can be 2, but not 1. But a political action committee, so the two guys in the coffee shop, they shall file a statement of formation within 10 days after formation. We already crossed this constitutional Rubicon again, evidently back in 1977. Don't think the senator from Bates Creek was here yet, probably part of the problem. That's in the books now. So curiously that our laws would be disparate to two citizens of this state from participating in electioneering communications, but favor out-of-state organizations, which is how the law currently exists, without this bill passing. So two people get together, they are required within 10 days to file a statement of formation if they choose to spend more than $500. This bill raises that to $1,000, so arguably providing further First Amendment protections, which I don't think has anything to do with, but it certainly raises the bar to be more realistic on how much campaign expenditures we're focusing on in order to require these government restrictions about these communications. Electioneering communication found later in the statutory section means includes in any advertisement which is publicly distributed as a billboard, brochure, email, mailing, magazine, pamphlet, or periodical as the component of an internet website or newspaper, or by the facilities of a cable TV system, electronic communication network, internet streaming service, radio station, telephone or cellular system, television station or satellite system, and which refers to or depicts a clearly identified candidate for nomination for a public office, a clearly identified ballot proposition, which does not expressly advocate the nomination, election, or defeat of the candidate. B, focus, listen up, or can only be reasonably interpreted as an appeal to vote for or against the candidate or ballot proposition. So even if you're not saying the candidate's name, still included in electioneering communication, already unlawful. And if it's made within 30 calendar days of a primary election, or 60 calendar days of a general election, or 21 calendar days of any special election during which the candidate or ballot proposition will appear on the ballot, and it is targeted to the electors in the geographic area the candidate would represent if elected or affected by the ballot position. Again, I don't want to read to you the statute, but this is already on the books. I don't know if those two people need a lawyer to read this, but the chilling effect you're concerned with is already unlawful. Let's go down to 2225-106 of the filing of campaign reports under subsection H, an organization, which is undefined in the statutory section, which this bill does address by providing that definition of organization. An organization that expends in excess of $500, this is currently in statute, in any primary, general, or special election to cause an independent expenditure or electioneering communication to be made shall file an itemized statement of contributions and expenditures with the appropriate filing office. This statement shall include the identify the organization causing the electioneering communication to occur, be filed at least 7 days, but not more than 14 days before any election. Only list those expenditures and contributions which relate to an independent expenditure, set forth a full and complete record of contributions, of course I'm summarizing now, be signed by both the chairman and the treasurer of the organization. Their names must be disclosed if those positions are present in the organization, or by the person who caused the independent expenditure or electioneering communication to be made. There's additionally more, but I just want to get rid of all of the ghosts that everyone sees, that this is directed at any one particular individual, that this is already unlawful on our books, and this provides those necessary clarifications that we have heard concerns about throughout our state. On and for the bill.
Senator Driscoll.
Chairman, I'll do it fairly quickly, but this is directed to the statements we've had. You just heard what's on the law. What this bill really does for the statements we've been hearing for the opposition to this, it makes it much better, because right now we heard that all the names are going to be released. That might be a gray area right now in the law. I'm not sure how that falls, but apparently it's happened, and it's a lawsuit. What this bill does, if you go to page 2, this is new language. It says, name and mailing address of the organization, name and mailing address of the chairman and treasurer if applicable, which is what she just read, goes through, date and time. It specifies you're not going to have your organization's people out there. It puts someone on the line that's an individual. That's what this bill does. If we go back to the other argument we heard that talks about issue advocacy, and I'm not sure how existing law falls in there, we read through it all, but this one does. It deals with issue advocacy. You go to page 3, and I'll read the statement. It says, within 10 days receipt any funds for the purpose of supporting or opposing any initiative or referendum, petition drive, or any ballot proposition. You can do any kind of advocacy you want. It can be anything under the sun. But if it goes in favor or opposed to initiative or referendum or a candidate, you've now triggered it. But up to that, you can mail anything you want. We can talk about guns or abortion or all the issues we talk about. You can do that ad nauseum, as long as it doesn't deal with an issue that's up in front during those 3 special times. So it does not deal with advocacy. It deals with people that are trying to influence the outcome of a race, a ballot initiative, or that tax thing we heard about. And if you're going to do that, you need to tell people who's spending the money on it. And it's not the group of people. It can be 500 people. It can be 1,000. It can be 30,000. It says one person's going to be on the line, or maybe 2 if you've got a treasurer. And that's who's accountable. It's not the people of the organization. It is the person that represents it. Let's stick to the facts and existing law.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll just say this, that I've been listening and I haven't had any preconceived position on this bill beforehand, and I still wouldn't say I necessarily have one right now. But I can say with confidence that I don't know exactly what this bill does. I have heard a lot of, we already have that in statute, and then I've heard a lot of, but this is better. And if I'm left wondering what this bill does, that's probably a problem, but we're all hungry. So I'm not going to vote against it now because I'm still curious what it does. But I would like to know at some point after I eat. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Senator Bouchard.
Well, I'll keep it short, but I've heard a lot about all these existing laws. They've been in the books a long time, forever. But that's not what we're talking about, what I'm talking about anyway, because if we look at Senate File 18 in 2019, that's where this really started. This is where we started changing the code. And see, we should go back and look at the votes on that. But more importantly, we should look at the amendments. And if we look at an amendment on there, and I said back then you'd end up in a lawsuit. There's an amendment there that it says that a federally recognized as a social welfare organization under Section 501c4 of the Internal Revenue Code, or that is registered as a domestic nonprofit corporation. Domestic nonprofit would be someone who's registered in the state. They've told them who they are. In other words, those are the names of the officers. That they should be exempt is basically what I did on an amendment. And I think I had 7 people follow me back then. But the whole bill, the language is where this started. This is where it started, the electioneering language. It says electioneering communication means except as otherwise provided by paragraph. And it goes on to saying that it's a billboard, brochure, email, mailing, magazine, pamphlet. I think all the same things that you kept telling me. That stuff went into law in 2019. So that means if you send any of those things, and then it goes on to talk about the 30 calendar days. So evidently free speech is different on those 30 calendar days out of the election. And that's where we start getting into these laws when you get into an issue advocacy organization. Because they are talking about their issue. These are things that have happened in federal court cases already, and that's what I warned about in 2019. And so it's not things that have been on the books forever. It's things that went on the books in 2019 that I'm concerned with. And now we're just building upon those same things, and we're going to be in a bigger lawsuit. On and against.
Are you ready for the question? I sense that. Oh, Senator James, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to help out my friend from Laramie on what this bill does. This goes after people that are influencing, but it doesn't define what influencing is. Once again, voting records do influence, and issues do influence, but if they're backed up with facts and evidence of what they're saying, now it's bad because it's still considered influencing. We already have laws, as we've been told by the good senator from Cheyenne. A lot of these stuff that we've been talking about is already on the books, but now we're going after influencing with no specific definition. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? Are you hungry? Oh, I'm just. All those in favor of Senator Driscoll's motion when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 49, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. The chair is in question. All those in favor, please stand. You may sit. All those opposed, please stand. The vote is 19 aye, 8 no. House Bill 49 has passed committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee of the whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Nope, nope. Don't say anything yet.
2:30.
Oh, beg leave. Go ahead, Senator Case.
Unless we're not going to work committee of the whole this afternoon, that would be appropriate, but if it would be beg leave to rise to sit again.
Correct. Go ahead, Senator Driscoll. Would you like to restate that?
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee of the whole beg leave to rise and sit again.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Okay.
Opposed, say no.
Guys both unmuted?
Don't say no. Okay. Mr. President.